to find a new woman for the ABC powerhouse The View is over.
She's, of course, opinionated enough to help us begin the latest chapter in The View history.
But some of those opinions are, according to her critics, potentially lethal to children. The former Playmate is no doubt gorgeous and compelling, but Jenny McCarthy is also an outspoken and, many doctors and scientists say, irresponsible voice on the topic of vaccines. She believes immunizations led to developmental problems for her son, Evan, seen here on McCarthy's Twitter feed.
Without a doubt in my mind, I believe vaccinations triggered Evan's autism. So I think they need to wake up and stop hurting our kids.
There may not be a doubt in her mind. The problem is that the credible medical and scientific communities say she is wrong, that numerous studies have found no link between vaccines and autism, and that in this celebrity-suffused culture, McCarthy's words could have a potentially deadly impact by scaring parents away from vaccines.
Incredible to be red-pilled by a Hollywood celebrity going back to 2013 when she was on that show on The View. I never thought I would say those words. And again, I stress I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but what I've learned and what we're about to hear from our guest is absolutely startling. And I think it's something that we need to consider seriously. So without further ado, let's welcome aboard Catherine Layton, Chief Operating Officer from ICANN. Catherine, great to be with you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Really appreciate you covering this important topic.
Yeah, you know, like I said in the opening, I came across this and I was absolutely blown away. I had no idea, and it was a tweet that somebody put out. I had no idea that Health and Human Services was actually tasked to put out reports every 2 years on the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I guess I made that large sweeping assumption that with double-blinded placebo-controlled trials, and I used to sell pharmaceuticals, so I'm pretty up on this. I know about new drug applications. I didn't know that vaccine courts were standing in the way between the manufacturers and the actual plaintiffs who had suffered vaccine injuries. I mean, there's just so much of this we have to unpack this evening. So I guess I want to start with, how did you start working for ICANN and what brought you to this job? Because it's fairly significant, the landmark case that you all brought forth.
Sure. I mean, like so many people, I'm a mother of 2 boys and I vaccinated my kids. And I was one of those people that thought that anti-vaxxers were dangerous. And both of my kids were injured by their vaccines. My older son is doing fine now, thank God, but my younger son was very severely injured. So when that happened with my second kid, I really started doing a deep dive. And really what did it for me was I went on the CDC's website and looked at the ingredients and excipients of vaccines and thought, oh my God, I really don't know enough about this. And the more and more I dug, the more and more horrified I was. And I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. We kind of joined forces with Del Bigtree, who produced the film Vax, and we started ICANN together.
Incredible. So I want to take the audience to a letter that was published on December 31st to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And it says, Dear Secretary Azar and Acting Director Beckham, in our letter dated October 12, 2017, and this is from Del Bigtree, by the way, we notified Health and Human Services of a number of serious concerns regarding how the Department of HHS fulfills its obligations to ensure vaccine safety under the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. We voiced these concerns along with 55 other organizations who were copied on our letter and who represented over 5 million Americans. We thank HHS for the time and resources it dedicated to respond to our concerns in January of 18, including having its response reviewed and cleared by the following agencies within HHS, which include the CDC, which, by the way, President Trump is trying to reduce funding, the FDA, the National Institutes of Health, where Dr. Fauci's from, Office of the General Counsel, Human Resource Services Administration, and the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. We write again because after careful review, the substance of HHS's responses heightens the serious concerns we previously raised regarding the safety of the childhood vaccine schedule. And it says, as HHS is aware, the 1986 Act gave pharmaceutical companies immunity for liabilities for injuries caused by most of their vaccines and instead made the vaccine safety the responsibility of HHS. It goes on from there where you break the rest of this down. In fact, I actually am reading the wrong letter here. I'm sorry about that. I meant to read the one from Del Bigtree.
That's okay. We have a lot of letters. A lot of letters.
Yeah,
there.
You do have a lot of letters here. But essentially, that's the meat of it. Unfortunately, you do. But that's the meat of what I wanted to cover is that you all called them out and you sued and you you hired Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was then tasked by President Trump earlier in January of 2017 to look into this. So can you kind of walk us through how all that progressed? Because it's very significant.
Yeah, I mean, and always the struggle with this issue is it's so complicated that you really have to kind of go from the beginning. So 86, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Compensation Act happened because there was a product on the market, the DTP vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine, that was causing so many injuries that vaccine manufacturers went to Congress and said, if you don't grant us liability, remove liability from these products, we're going to stop making vaccines, and basically blackmailed Congress. So they passed the law, but part of that stipulation is to try to make sure that the product was safe, was that HHS, as you said before, was tasked with ensuring that vaccines were being made safe, and they were supposed to be doing that every 2 years. So when we started ICANN, really the bedrock of what we wanted to do was legally, because there's a lot of things that happen legislatively, there's a lot of things that happen in the media, but we really wanted to start building a case against them in the court, so that eventually we can go to the Supreme Court and make sure that everybody has the right to choose what is injected to their bodies and their children's bodies, and they know what the product is. So we decided to just submit a FOIA and say, let's see the reports. And we started going line by line through each one of the responsibilities of HHS and FOIAing and asking, where's that information, to make sure that they were doing it. And basically what happened was they wouldn't respond to our FOIAs, wouldn't respond. And so finally, Bobby teamed up with us, ICANN. He also is the chairman of Children's Health Defense, which we work in coordination quite often with them. And they finally had to admit that they didn't have any of the reports because they hadn't done any of the science.
How much funding was put into HHS to make sure they were following the guidelines of the 1986 Safety Act that was put in place?
Know, but I'm sure that it is a large amount of money. As a parent, it's just really shocking that that wasn't done on such an important product given to healthy children.
Absolutely. When you learned that this was going on, what sort of, outrage did you bring to the public sector? Because, I think what's happened with today, okay, I figured myself to be a very red pill person. I feel like I'm pretty much ahead of what the mainstream media is talking about on a given day. And I would say probably 99% of the audience in the chat room tonight is of the same ilk. We're very much in tune with what's going on. We have much better media sources than what you get on your television set on the wall. And I stand by that all the time. But this information I never really looked at. And I think it got colored by me, or not by me, by the mainstream media years ago, that it was an anti-vaxxer, pro-vaxxer argument. And so anybody that was anti-vax was considered crazy, because of course we know vaccines got rid of smallpox and measles and did all this great stuff. But digging around your website, which I hope the moderators will drop in the chat box for us, grab some of those links, but you have some unbelievable rabbit holes that you can go down on just the documents alone. I was telling producer Liz earlier, I'm like, oh my God, I just got it downloaded in about 3 hours and I've barely scratched the surface. There's a lot of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And I want to call attention out to, some of the stuff that I saw in terms of just like the vaccine schedules. And of course, Robert Kennedy, he took a position on this early on and stood by you guys. And we've got a quote from something he said. I want to see if producer Liz can throw that up on the screen, because to me, this is a pretty powerful quote. But he goes off and says, they've got the shot. That night they had a fever of 103. They go to sleep and 3 months later, their brain is gone. This is a Holocaust. What this is doing to our country. I mean, that is pretty powerful words coming from somebody who one might think from the family genesis or, family roots alone might actually be very pro-vaccine, pro-big pharma. And he's taken a stand really kind of against that. How did you guys come to working with him?
I mean, I think, Bobby, Dell, ICANN, all of these people who are really working hard to fight this fight, it's always been serendipitous. We always like to say that this is bigger than ourselves and the truth will always win. It was really through Vaxxed and through advocacy that we decided to team up with our legal team, and him being a lawyer, and obviously because of the task force that he was going to head up with President Trump. But I wanted to mention something interesting that you mentioned, Dr. Fauci. Early on, before we sent this letter to HHS, kind of start of our dialogue with them, Del Bigtree, Bobby Kennedy had a meeting with Tony Fauci, Francis Collins, all of the heads of the biggest agencies. And we had really one simple ask, and the ask was, why aren't you doing a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study? Because there is the data that already exists that they could be using in a database that nobody is allowed to use. Why won't you do that? And Anthony Fauci's answer was, we will never do that study. I mean, you have to ask yourself why.
So let's just rewind that a little bit more and unpack that, because, when as a pharmaceutical rep, you always had double-blinded placebo-controlled trials if you were really rolling out a serious medication, right? That's just standard operating procedure, and it takes years to get a drug from trial to the market. Why aren't they doing double-blinded placebo-controlled trials with vaccines? I mean, just sugar water injections or saline water injections is no big deal. Why aren't they doing that?
Well, there's two arguments. One of them is that it's unethical, because if you have a currently licensed vaccine, you can't do another vaccine trial with someone and not give them a vaccine. And their viewpoint is that it's unethical to withhold a life-saving intervention for a person. So that's one of their arguments. Another argument is that there will be a healthy user bias and the data won't really be reliable. But honestly, the truth is you see this gigantic explosion in vaccine manufacturing after the 1986 Act was passed. You or me probably got 10 vaccines when we were kids. Right now, if you follow the schedule to the T, by the time you are 18 years old, you will have 72 doses of vaccines.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
For diseases
I know we had the may or may not come.
Mm-hmm.
Or mostly
like
eradicated.
Measles has a death rate of 1 in 10,000, and you see that we don't even know the injury rate of the measles vaccine. We actually FOIA'd the clinical trial data, ICANN did, to see what the adverse events groups were in the MMR2 vaccine, which is the one currently on the market. And we found that almost 50% of kids had gastrointestinal illnesses following the vaccine. But that's not something you ever hear in the news. Was only studied for 6 months. I mean, the clinical trial criteria for vaccines, because they're considered biologics and not drugs, is different. But hepatitis B vaccine, which we give to babies on their first day of life, there's 2 on the market. One was tested for 4 days and one was tested for 3 days. So if your baby dies on the 5th day, it's not considered related at all to the vaccine.
Unbelievable. All right. One more question before we take a quick break here, because this is, to me, such startling information. But how do you track an adverse event, and why isn't the CDC recommending that adverse events be tracked?
So there's another layer of complication with the 1986 Act, and that's that HHS is not only responsible for making sure that vaccines are safe, they are then responsible. So if you sue, you go to vaccine court, which you mentioned earlier, and that court is not a court that has judges and attorneys that are well versed in vaccinology. They have these people called special masters. Some of them are like accounting majors that end up becoming a special master in vaccine court, and there's no discovery. So you have no way to find out what's really happening. But HHS, if you lose, they have to pay. So HHS is not only responsible for making sure that vaccines are safe, any science that they put out saying the vaccines might not be safe can then be used against them in court for them to pay out. So it's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house. And that's one of the biggest problems. We would really like to see liability put back on the manufacturers. We think a lot of the issues with adverse events would be cleared up there. But most adverse events, and there's different categories. There's systemic adverse events, there's serious adverse events, there's non-serious adverse events. And the longest that I have seen them look for serious adverse events in a trial is 6 to 12 months. But usually what happens is it'll be a phone call or a survey that they send to your home. They're not really watching you closely, and they don't have to, so they don't. And pharmaceuticals companies are the ones that hold the data. And so they can do what they want. There's a lot of number massaging happening, and frankly, it's just a complete lack of scientific evidence that they're allowed to use. And I just, here at ICANN, are really trying to change that.
I know that you can capture that, it was established where you wanted to capture adverse events in the real world. And the 1986 Act did establish Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, VAERS, that was supposed to be operated by HHS. So what you're telling me is, I'm a parent, My son got a vaccine for MMR. He had an adverse reaction, super high fever, crying, and it was sort of like that for 2 or 3 days, bathtubs, ice, all that kind of stuff. I called my physician and told them what was going on, and they gave me protocols to follow to deal with the adverse event. And that was really the report. And maybe it went to the VARES, the VAERS system. Maybe it didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, the VAERS system is a passive system, so that it's not mandatory to report to VAERS. For instance, with my kids or people I know their kids have had seizures, they've had very serious, side effects from the vaccine. Most doctors don't even know that VAERS exists. They don't even know, and they don't report it. And what happens is when you report it, it goes in this file, and it may be followed up on, it may not. But the biggest issue with VAERS is that is supposed to be the stopgap for safety. That is supposed to be the red light that turns on to say there's a problem with this product. But Harvard Pilgrim Health did an audit of the VAERS system for HHS. Taxpayers paid over $1 million for this report, and they found that less than 1% of adverse events are being reported to VAERS. And for example, I believe in 2018, there were over 54,000 serious reports to VAERS. If that is less than 1%, there is an astronomical rate of vaccine injury happening.
Incredible. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Can we hold that thought? We'll take a quick break. Okay, go ahead. Quick thing.
Oh, I was going to say, we can take a break.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And guys, please chat, smash that like button, share the show. We'll be right back. And by the way, before we come back, I just want to remind everybody, we're going to roll a video. You're going to hear the word tomato. It's being substituted for the word vaccine in case anybody doesn't pick up on that. We'll be right back.
I pledge in their honor that we will develop a vaccine and we will defeat the virus. We're doing very well with vaccine development and therapeutic development. But I want to thank our brave doctors and nurses and frontline responders. The job they do is incredible, and they are truly brave. My administration will stop at nothing to save lives and shield the vulnerable, which is so important. We've learned so much about this disease, and we know who the vulnerable are, and we are going to indeed shield them. And again, the vaccines are coming, and they're coming a lot sooner than anyone thought possible, by years. If you look at the old system and look at the new system, I think by years. The China virus is a vicious and dangerous illness, but we've learned a great deal about it and who it targets. We are in the process of developing a strategy that's going to be very, very powerful. We've developed them as we go along. Some areas of our country are doing very well. Others are doing less well. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is. It's what we have. You look over the world, it's all over the world. And it tends to do that. The governors are working very, very hard, and we are supporting them 100%. Everything they need, they get, and we are taking good care. We have tremendous supplies and a great supply chain, whether it's ventilators or gowns or just about anything they need. So that's a big difference from inheriting very, very empty cupboards. The median age of those who succumb to the China virus is 78 years old. Roughly half of all deaths have been individuals in nursing homes or long-term care. In one study, 90% of those hospitalized had underlying medical conditions, whether it's heart or diabetes, but usually it's some kind of a condition. It seems that people have that, and if they do, it's a problem, no question about it. Young adults may often have mild or even no symptoms. They won't even know they're sick. They won't have any idea that they have a virus. They won't have any idea at all. America's youth will act responsibly, and we're asking everybody that when you...
Hi, I'm Johnny Neat, author of the Billy Mack Thrillers. What you're about to see is the promotional video for my latest book, The DeSoto Rule, out now on Amazon Kindle and iBooks. I hope you enjoy the video.
Check this out. The newest book put out by Billy Mack Thrillers series is out, The DeSoto Rule, authored by a real-life spook, or is he? Now in retirement and telling real-life stories, or are they? The DeSoto Rule is about getting into Cuba being easy for Billy. Getting out, however, Not so easy, especially when you're wanted for murder of a Cuban policeman. Billy is pulled into a world where he doesn't know a soul, can't speak the language, and can't trust anyone. He is given one piece of advice, and he's boarding the plane for Havana. Watch your back.
If you understand what I'm saying, all right? When people want to put stuff inside of your body with the use of like a syringe or a needle, I'm going to use the word tomato for that. Okay, so here we go. U.S. government loses landmark tomato lawsuit. Forced tomatoes now can be legally stopped. No quality control for over 32 years. And then here is the case number. And this is when it was filed. I believe the decision was made sometime in April. Tomato injury lawyer are credited with this victory. They demanded the relevant government documents proving that all federally approved tomatoes had been tested for quality over the past 32 years, and there were none. Here are the huge legal and practical implications in this legal victory for the American people. This means that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and all tomato makers have been lying to the American people for over 30 years about the effectiveness and safety of tomatoes. This may ultimately mean that continuing the existence, at least in their current form, of 5 U.S. healthcare agencies are now in doubt. This may also threaten the existence of state medical boards and exclusive medical guilds like this medical guild right here. This means that tomato makers have been fraudulently exempt from what all other makers have been forced to do concerning biannual recertification for quality and effectiveness, meaning that their tomatoes have never been tested for quality and have not proven safety or effectiveness for over 30 years. This case can now be legally cited by all parents, fraudulently mandated by any government organization regulation requirements that they must put tomatoes in their children for school or any other activity to stop the force of tomatoes in their children.
Wow.
And we're having a great conversation with Catherine Layton from ICANN. Catherine, you know, watching that video, you can see how terrified this YouTube broadcaster was. He was afraid of losing his channel just by saying the word vaccine, so he put tomatoes out there. This is what we're up against. This is what we're up against. Right? Any comments?
It's a scary time. So one of our biggest educational outreaches here at ICANN is we have a show called The High Wire with Del Bigtree, and we've really been growing. We have lots of followers, but we continue to see more and more censorships, especially because we're really into the natural health and vaccine arena. I'm really glad you played that video though, because I have been getting a lot of emails of people saying that HHS has done no testing. I really want to be clear on that, on what the stipulated order says. What it says is that they haven't created the task force to do biannual reports to make sure that vaccines are safer. They do have safety studies. They have efficacy studies. I think there are serious issues within all of those, but people just need to be made clear on that. If you want to look at safety and efficacy studies, you absolutely should check out our documents on icanndecide.org. Click on government and then click on HHS. You'll find all of that there. I also want to make sure that everybody knows some of the other lawsuits that we've won. We sued HHS and the FDA. Actually, we sued the FDA asking for the clinical trials relied upon to license the flu vaccine and the DTaP vaccine, which is given in pregnancy, which a lot of women who are pregnant are basically forced to get. And they also admitted that they didn't have any safety studies on any of that. It's an off-label use, and so I want to make sure people know about that. And then also, while we were talking about autism, we recently won a similar lawsuit against CDC, where we asked for all of the studies showing that the vaccines given in the first 6 months of life, the proof that they don't cause autism. And they gave us 22 studies. None of them had to do with any of the vaccines given in the first 6 months of life. One had to do with a DTaP vaccine, which is given, and the conclusion in that study was that there wasn't enough evidence to make a decision either way. So
Incredible.
Our hopes at ICANN here is that parents use all of these websites, use all of these lawsuits, use all of the data that we've put together to make sure that they are free to make an informed decision on what they're going to inject into their child to participate in society.
That's right. I want to throw a graphic up. We have a graphic on the unintended consequences of vaccines, and this is straight from your website, which I encourage. It's in the description box below. If you guys go to the links in the description box below, you can click on the ICANN website. But she has a graphic in here which shows you the unintended consequences of some of these vaccines, specifically measles having an increased risk of cancer, eliminating the measles, mumps vaccine also increased heart disease, and more. I mean, this is startling information, and this is sort of like as a retrospective review of lots and lots of data. Millions of people who've been vaccinated, you're starting to see trends. Can you speak to any more of that in the last few minutes we have here?
Absolutely. I mean, whether you believe in creation or you believe in intelligent design, there is no doubt that we are in a symbiotic relationship with everything around us. I personally believe that science proves the existence of God, and we have evolved with all of these organisms. They're part of our genome. They're part of what makes us human. And by us trying to play God and trying to prevent a rash that lasts for 2 weeks, we have all of these unintended consequences. There's studies, there's a big one out of Japan that shows that ovarian cancer rates more than double in people that have received, they're 50% less common in people that had a natural measles infection. And so really what we see here is companies playing God, making money off of it, but not really knowing the long-term effects. I think the coronavirus vaccine is a great example of that. I mean, I know people want to take it, and if you want to do that, you do that. But there's no way we are going to know the long-term safety profile of that vaccine. And that is the same for every other vaccine we have on the market. And if you do have a reaction, they say, oh, it's not related to that. But, I think even furthermore, kind of illustrated what you just said, it doesn't matter the systemic events in the terms of what diseases are we creating or not preventing by trying to play around with the immune system, which we don't even really know how it works still.
That's right. It is pretty startling when you hear they're only looking back 5 and 6 days for adverse reactions. That's what they're sort of basing their adverse reaction studies from right now. To me, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'm glad that you're tracking stuff like this and you're putting all this information out there. Again, your links to all of this information is in the description box below. We'll make sure that the mods are grabbing that from your ICANN website and ICANN Decide. It is fantastic information. You could spend weeks going through all the stuff that you guys have put together. So really appreciate you coming by this evening and sharing this information. Catherine Layton, COO of the Informed Consent Action Network. You have just been a wealth of information.
Thank you so much for having me and getting the word out. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. So coming up after this, we have Chief Joseph Lukachik, who has served in the west suburban area of Chicago as a police officer for over 30 years. He served the past 15 of it as the chief of police. Hillsdale is like I said, a Chicago suburb, and Chicago has been in the news a lot every single week, and we get these unbelievable reports of violence coming out of there. Joe has completed extensive training at the Center for Missing and Exploited Children as well in Washington, D.C. He's an advisor to the Cook County Department of Homeland Security, Cook County's Children's Advocacy Center. In addition, he's also been appointed by the governor of Illinois in 2015 to be on the Illinois Racial Profiling and Data Oversight Board. I'd like to just point out that he really appreciates and believes his exposure to the cultural differences is a major contribution to his success. His father and his two sons, his father who's passed away and his two sons also have served in the line of duty. So I think we're very blessed to have a gentleman with such incredible roots in the line of law enforcement. So coming up, we have...
Good morning, Dan. So I just spoke with Chicago police. They gave me some revised numbers for the weekend. They tell me since Friday night at 6 through midnight, a total of 12 people have been shot and killed here in Chicago. 63 people shot altogether, and that includes 9 juveniles. Now, this is the latest shooting that occurred this weekend. It happened last night around 11:20. 5 people shot at 113th and Carpenter in Morgan Park. Police are saying at least 2 people are dead. and those survivors taken to various hospitals in critical condition. We know at least 2 of those men are. Then there was this deadly shooting that took place in the Loop on Wacker near Wabash. That happened in the wee hours of Sunday morning. A 35-year-old man killed, shot while in a vehicle. A woman also in that vehicle hit twice by gunfire. Police say the shooting started with several men arguing on a nearby bridge, and one of those men opened fire. And then later Sunday afternoon, 2 children were shot at 82nd and Ada. Police say the 2 boys were cousins, ages 10 and 11. They were outside in front of a home when someone drove by and started firing. That 10-year-old shot in the ankle, the 11-year-old hit in the arm, both taken to Comer Children's Hospital, where at last check they were in good condition. A 27-year-old man was also hit in the leg and arm in that particular incident. Family members telling us they were gathering on the 2-year anniversary of the death of another man, one of their relatives, due to gun violence.
It's no guidance. No. That's period. It's no guidance.
Nobody
at all. You know, we don't stick together. We gotta learn to stick together.
The only way we're going to solve this problem and any other shooting, if they talk to the detectives, give the detectives the information. That way they can identify the subject. If you know who this subject is, just give their names up.
So I also got another sobering statistic from Chicago police just moments ago. They tell me a total of 203 juveniles have been shot since January 1st of this year alone. And they tell me 35 juveniles have been killed among those 203 shot. And juvenile is defined to them by someone who was 17 years of age or younger. Reporting live from CPD headquarters, Courtney Gooseman, WGN News.
And welcome back. I'm going to be joined here shortly with Chief Joe Lukacek, who also, by the way, not only has he been in the force for 30 years, he teaches criminal justice, criminal law, and police administration at local community colleges. I think he's probably working really hard to create solutions needed for reform and changes in law enforcement, because Chicago is a mess. Chief Lukacek, it's great to be with you.
And how are you? Thank you for having me. I have some updated news.
Please. Great. That was good news.
You're going to get this news before anybody else. 14 people were just shot in the city of Chicago at a funeral.
Today?
Just now, 25 minutes ago. Just got information from it. So that just happened today.
Oh, my. What? I mean, this is worse than Afghanistan. What is going on in your neck of the woods? This is, I mean, really, where is this? What is going on?
It's bad. You know what? We don't have the support from the district attorney's office. Our prosecutor does not support law enforcement right now. We're running into a lot of problems prosecuting cases, keeping people in jail.
So what are you going to do about it? What are you out there trying to get people to hear, and what sort of policies are you trying to get them to adopt so that this ends? It seems as if this is just the recurring theme, and it's like, how many people, I usually Google it every Monday, how many died in Chicago? And I'm shocked the numbers just keep going up.
It goes up every week. It's a ridiculous number. And, you know, and here's something that nobody has covered yet across this nation. That's just the city of Chicago. Chicago is also in what's called Cook County, one of the largest counties in America. Nobody counts the numbers of shootings and homicides there also. So I don't know those numbers, but I guarantee you that they are huge.
So recently we saw a lady by the name of Bevelyn Beatty. She made the news the last couple of days in New York City. She was the lady that was going out pouring black paint all over the city, where they had Black Lives Matters that had been painted everywhere. She was covering it up with black paint. And the irony in all of this is you saw the New York police force arrest her, and she's out there evangelizing, you know, get Jesus in your life. And, you know, she's not supporting Black Lives Matter. In fact, the New York's finest is, you know, known for turning their back on their mayor because they don't see their mayor as supporting the police department, yet they were mandated to arrest this woman. How do you see that?
I don't know how they mandate arresting somebody. I mean, you still have the option to arrest somebody or not to arrest somebody. Somebody can't tell me I have to arrest somebody.
So why do you think they did?
Politics, strictly politics. You know, they don't want to upset Black Lives Matter, which is just a political organization trying to overthrow our current government. That's all it is.
I agree that it is, but I mean, is there no movement inside the fraternity or the fraternal order of the police to say all lives matter? Where is that?
You know,
line of reasoning.
Here's the problem. You know what? Law enforcement, we don't have a national spokesperson. We don't have somebody who sits and addresses all these problems nationwide on a continual basis. You know, Fox has their people, CNN has their people. Everybody has different people. We as an organization, as a brotherhood, sisterhood across this country, don't have a national spokesperson. That's where we're faulting. That's something that we have to work on.
Well, is it something that you want to pitch yourself to be? Because I see you out here starting to make the media circuit. We lost Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He's going to go quiet. We need somebody else. Come on.
I don't mind helping out. But no, I think it's really important. It really is.
All right. So how do you see this going forward? I mean, are we going to continue to spiral out of control, or at what point are the brakes going to come on? Are we going to turn this around? Because to me, it seems like we're spiraling out of control with the police trying to sort of kowtow to the politics. But at some point, I would imagine somebody has to say, an adult has to show up and put a line in the sand and say enough is enough. Are we a law and order organization, or are we not?
It all depends on the people that are in charge. You have Chicago, New York, Minnesota, Atlanta. These are all run by, I hate to say they're run by Democrats, and they have the largest problems. The police departments take their marching orders from the politicians that are in charge, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. Until that has changed, we're going to continue having these problems. I honestly, and I'm not a conspiracist whatsoever at all. However, based on everything that I've seen in the last 6 months, 5 years even, we're going to spiral downward. It's going to continue. And if President Trump does not get reelected, it's going to continue. And we're going to lose our law enforcement. We will.
Do you want to see him help support law enforcement with National Guard on a more regular basis? Do you want to see the military roll in? What would make you feel like you're getting the support that you need?
Not defunding the police, but that's more on a local level.
Well, that goes without saying, but I mean, so expand on that some more. What would you need from federal government that might help what you're doing out in the field?
Honestly, money is, and the problem with, law enforcement, we get grants. We get grants from the federal government. However, the grants go to the states. The states take an administrative fee for doing the grant work. Then it goes to the counties, and then the counties distribute it to the local towns. So by the time it gets down to us, there's really not a lot of money. There is some money, but it's just not a lot. Cook County alone has 103 towns surrounding Chicago. So it's a lot of towns.
All right. So what about taking maybe an extra step then? Maybe somebody from law enforcement needs to say, I'm going to run so that I can represent my brotherhood, my fraternity, and help change the system from within, because politics starts locally and then the cancer grows up from there. Is that an option?
Yeah, definitely. We've had some retired police officers that were very, very outspoken, run for state senate, Congress, and stuff like that, and they've been elected. And they're definitely on that forefront for police officers and law enforcement.
All right, so I'm taking a look. We're live right now. We've got folks in the chat. Somebody here, Mama B, says, "Why no martial law?" Do you feel like Chicago is to the point where you need martial law based on the amount of homicides and shootings that are going on a daily basis?
No, the problem with Chicago, and it's a very simple problem, where the areas are that you're having these shootings. You just send police officers that are willing to do their job and secure the areas. The problem is we do not get the support. Like I said earlier, we don't get the support from our state's attorney's office. Every police officer in Chicago and the suburbs of Cook County are afraid to do their job because we do not want to get arrested and sent to jail like we've seen in other cities. That's a big problem right now.
Is Chicago seeing an exodus of people retiring from the force early or moving and leaving the state?
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny, I was speaking with one of my administrators today, and we were talking about, I have 30 years and I could retire today. And I'm like, well, I think we should stick it out and see this all through and make sure it's done the right way. And that's, so it's either you're staying or you're going, but it's based on what's happening.
And thank you for taking that position, because you got to hold the line. I mean, there's so many people out there right now. This is not only a biblical battle, but this is a fight for the soul of this nation. It has been for a while, and it's culminating. And we all hear this every election. This is the most important election. But frankly, this really is. And I think people finally understand the gravity of the situation. because the country is so divided and the mainstream media has done an incredible job of pitting us against each other. But people that don't take time to understand history don't really understand why we are here and how we need to continue to keep pushing forward. So it's, gentlemen like you holding the line. Do you feel that you have enough of a groundswell with your fraternity, that you have enough people to hold the line with you?
You know what's funny? Not only do we have police officers, but we have residents. We have the citizen. We have African Americans. We have Hispanics. We have whites. We have Chinese. We have Oriental. We have everybody, Middle Eastern, that come out of the woodwork to support police. So what you see in mainstream media, that the police are beating people up and the black people don't like police and white policemen beat up black people, it's not true. It's not true. We all get along pretty well, and it's amazing.
Do you think President Trump is allowing the people, the citizens in local towns and nationally to see what we're seeing so that perhaps we will become more activated ourselves and step up and support law enforcement, to wit Bevelyn Beatty's, recent display of supporting the police and refunding the police, as she was saying yesterday when she was smearing black paint over Black Lives Matter?
I don't think he has a choice right now. He truly doesn't. I mean, look at the couple that was arrested in St. Louis. They're being prosecuted with felonies. I mean, that's ridiculous. Obviously, the governor's going to pardon them, give them a full pardon. However, that's a huge issue. Why are these people even being charged? The president, his hands are tied. He can obviously say a lot of different things to support us, but it's us on our level where we have to get the support on our local level.
Do you think that citizens, do you think that a constitutional carry law, if we had it where you could open carry in the state of Illinois, would change the tune and the tenor of what you see happening in your state, particularly in Cook County?
The sad thing is we have a concealed carry. We have a concealed carry in the state of Illinois, which was recently passed. Crime hasn't gone down. Crime has gone up, but it's not because of concealed carry. There's more people that are carrying guns there's more people carrying guns illegally than legally in the state of Illinois, and that's the hugest issue. We work with the ATF to try to catch the people, but basically it's straw purchases that are coming out from the southern states up to Illinois, and it's a big ring.
Do you think that the recent light that has been shed on big law enforcement community like the FBI and ATF most recently, because the Fast and Furious is coming back in the news, has been detrimental to law enforcement down at the local police department level? When you get a black eye at the top level of the FBI, does that sort of reflect poorly on law enforcement in general? And has it had a negative impact as how the community respects or disrespects you as an officer?
No, I wouldn't say respect or disrespect the police officer. Obviously, the whole department, we're all part of the Department of Justice, and I mean, it affects that in the national sense. However, on a local level, not really. We have limited exposure with federal agents unless we have a federal crime going on or if we're working on a major task force.
One of the things President Trump always talks about, and it's something that we always like to close the show on, is transitioning to greatness. How do you think what you do as a police officer can help facilitate that transition to greatness in this country?
Empathy. One word, empathy. Every police officer has empathy. We go through training. We teach people how to have empathy, what people need. And I mean, if people understand that we're not just the big bad guy looking to arrest people, we're also there to help people. I think once they understand that, they'll accept us, and I think things will calm down.
Fantastic. Chief Joseph Lukacek, thank you so much for stopping by Steel Truth this evening. We really appreciate your words. And thank you so much for standing in the line of fire for all of us and protecting us. We appreciate that as well.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right, we'll be right back.
So what are you planning to do? Well, I'm going to do something that I can tell you, because we're not going to let New York and Chicago and Philadelphia and Detroit and Baltimore and all of these, Oakland is a mess. We're not going to let this happen in our country. All run by liberal Democrats.
So more federal law enforcement to some of these
We're going to have more federal law enforcement, that I can tell you. In Portland, they've done a fantastic job. They've been there 3 days, and they really have done a fantastic job in a very short period of time. No problem. They grab them, a lot of people in jail. They're leaders. These are anarchists. These are not protesters. People say protesters. These people are anarchists. These are people that hate our country. And we're not going to let it go forward. And I'll tell you what, the governor and the mayor and the senators out there, they're afraid of these people. That's the reason they don't want us to help them. They're afraid. I really believe they're actually maybe even physically afraid of these people. Because what they're doing is incredible. We didn't just go there. This wasn't like it started right away. We went there after 51 days. We said, we can't let that happen anymore. But these are anarchists. And the politicians out there, yes, they're weak, but they're afraid of these people. They're actually afraid of these people. And that's why they say, we don't want the federal government helping. How about Chicago? Would you say they need help after this weekend? Do you know the numbers? Did you hear the numbers? Many, many shot, many, many killed. I'm not talking about 1, 2, was it 18 people killed? I think more than that. And you added up over the summer. This is worse than Afghanistan, by far. This is worse than anything anyone's ever seen. All run by the same liberal Democrats. And you know what? If Biden got in, that would be true for the country. The whole country would go to hell. And we're not going to let it go to hell. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, let's.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do?
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Jeffrey Epstein, you got yours. Oh, producer Liz, you know, she caught me one day when we were goofing off in the studio, and she's never going to let me live that one down. But anyway, it was kind of fitting considering the segment we just had with Chief Lukaszczyk. I think that was a really, really good interview. I think he's a strong patriot. He understands the problems. It's purely politics. And let's face it, these guys suit up every single day, and they go out into the neighborhood. And you just heard he broke 14 people shot just before he came on the show tonight live. So this is just a war zone that these people are operating in, and they have absolutely no support from their own government. This is the people that are supposed to make sure that they're taken care of. I mean, it's just insanity. I wish that people would wake up and consider and check themselves when you go to the ballot box who you're electing, because those people are making decisions that definitely impact you. And if the police don't feel like they have their backs covered, how on earth can they continue to cover our backs? So I've been monitoring the chat, by the way, and I see a lot of you really respect law enforcement. I also saw a lot of you talk about the recent news of Twitter displacing a lot of the Anon accounts and QAnon accounts. Thousands and thousands of QAnon accounts apparently are being targeted and taken down on Twitter, which is really just a shame. But it just tells you, as I've lost my account before, and I finally got it back up over 50,000 in the last couple of days. And I want to thank everybody who followed me to help build my account back up because I lost it last year. You know, yours truly is considered a QAnon conspiracy Pizzagate theorist all the time. They wrap me up and smear me, but that's okay. I'll stand by my words because I'm in good company with people like Liz Crokin who've been reporting on it. And when you have good patriots that are calling information out, like what we had tonight with Catherine Layton from ICANN, talking about vaccines and how our own government, again, we hire these people, we pay their salaries with our taxes to make sure that we're safe and they're not doing their jobs. We really need to check ourselves and ask ourselves, when it's time to drain the swamp in November, whose team do we want to be on? And I can tell you right now, this girl right here, this reporter, is on Team Trump all the way because I know how hard he's working to drain the swamp. Anyway, thanks so much for a great show. We'll see you again tomorrow night, everybody. Have a great evening. Talk to you then, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. She's the boss.
Boss Liz.
Yeah.
It was producer Liz, now it's Boss Liz.